How you doing? This is Chad with Vytamenc Tactical. Today we're going to go over installation of a lower parts kit in one of our VCT lower receivers. Um, we have the Ranger Series lower receiver here today. It does have a proprietary part, so I'll be going over that. What you're going to need is a lower parts kit, lower receiver, buffer tube, backing plate, castle nut. You're going to need a couple of tools. I'll go ahead and show you those on the camera. First off, you're going to need a lower receiver and a parts kit. Now, inside the parts kit, you're going to have all of your parts, and I'm going to go over each one of them and what each one of them do. Okay, trigger spring, disconnector, and disconnector spring. Hammer, and your hammer spring. Now, inside this hammer, you're going to see right here, inside this hole here, you're going to see what's called your J spring. This spring comes built into the hammer already. It's always installed at the factory, and it's really not a serviceable item. I have seen one of them break, and to install this, basically it's a shaped like a J, hence the name J spring. You push it up from the bottom of the trigger, because there's a hole in the bottom of the trigger there, or I'm sorry, the hammer, and it gets swedged with a punch and a drift so that it cannot fall out. Now, is what this J spring does is it frictions your hammer pin here from popping out left to right with this little groove that's cut inside of your hammer spring or hammer pin. Now, you've got two pins here, that one of them's a hammer, one of them's a trigger pin, and they're both identical. They can be installed either way, vice versa. Doesn't matter which one you use them for, hammer or trigger. You can't put them in backwards either. So your lower parts kit's also going to come with three similar looking springs. These two of them are exactly the same, and they are used for your pivot and takedown pins. This spring here, which is a little bit fatter than your pivot and takedown pin springs, but it's shorter. Okay, you're going to come with a safety selector detent. You're going to come with a safety selector. Okay, now is what this detent does is it indexes your safety selector through these two detent marks here in the safety selector. Now, what you have here is your front takedown, or your rear takedown, and your front pivot pin. Notice how they have a groove cut in them. That's what your detents ride in, and what holds these two pins in. Okay, your parts kit should come with a buffer detent and buffer detent spring. Okay, should come with a socket head cap screw for your grip. Now, this here is a proprietary part to the VCT Ranger Series lower receiver. It's a threaded pivot pin that takes the place of the roll pin in the bolt catch. Okay, your parts kit's going to come with a bolt catch. Your parts kit is going to come with a bolt catch detent, which is this here, and a bolt catch detent spring. Okay. Now your parts kit's also going to come with a magazine lever, which basically catches your magazine. It's going to come with your spring and your mag release button. Now inside of California, you're going to need a bullet button or a magazine lock of some sort. Bullet buttons, they work great. Okay, you're also going to need buffer tube, backing plate, castle nut. Tools that you're going to need. Start with a 3/16 Allen head, and that's going to be used for one purpose, and that's for your grip screw. You're going to need a drift so that you can basically clean out your safety selector hole. This tool here, you get this on Brownells. It's for installing your front pivot pin detent. I'm going to show you two ways to do it, one with this tool, one without. You're going to need a small hammer. You're also going to need a screwdriver. Screwdriver, you may or may not need it, depending on what you have for a grip screw. You could either have a slotted screw or a socket head cap screw. You're going to need a punch. You're going to need a 1/16 Allen, and that's going to be used for the bolt catch proprietary Allen head pivot pin. You're going to need a number 42 drill bit. This is optional, but I'm just going to go through it with you guys just in case. And this here is for tightening. This is your buffer tube castle nut wrench. They're nice. You get them on Brownells. Grip, also going to come with your lower parts kit. Okay, many different ways to install your lower parts kit. This is the method that I use. Is it the best? It's debatable, but it works for us. First thing I do is I take the front detent spring. Of the three closely resembled springs, it's the one of the longer ones. There's two of them, one for your front detent and one for your rear. Now this is what I always like to do. I take that number 42 drill bit and I put it into the hole and I clean it out. A lot of the times when you're working with a anodized part, you get salts and stuff from the anodizing process stuck in this front detent spring hole here. That's just an easy way to get it out, to make sure that you're not fighting against a partially plugged hole. I put the I put the detent spring in, and I grab the small detent. Easiest way to do this is with the tool from Brownells, and how it works is you take the tool and you'll notice that it has a hole in the front of it that goes all the way through. That comes in from the left hand side of the lower receiver, and it lines up with the hole that you just stuck the spring in. You turn it vertical, drop it into the hole. You take your hammer spring, and how it has a leg on it, you use it to press the detent in. Okay, and you turn the safety select, or the pin, halfways at the same time while removing your pin, pin from the hammer spring. Turn it at 90 degrees so it's locking that detent into the hole and presetting it. You grab your front takedown pin, and the way that you tell is the front pin is longer than the rear. So you take the front one and you push it in, creating a little bit of resistance on the tool and sliding the takedown pin in. Now, what you do is you twist it until you feel it engage into the detent. The detent will engage into the groove. Easy way to get it out. Same tool that you used the first time, your spring. You press the detent in and you turn it so that it disengages from the groove that it's stuck in. Now, spring alert on this one, guys. How I remove this is I put my hand over the front of this and I pull it out. If you don't, this pin will shoot across the room and you'll never see it again. The way that I personally use to get it in without the tool is I put it on there and I kind of hold it there with my index finger. I take the front pivot pin, push it in, depress it into the hole, and slide it in. It's a little bit harder than it looks the first time. Next is what I do is I take my hammer and I take my hammer spring. Okay, and what I do is you want this hammer spring to be loaded so that it is not backwards. This is backwards. This is the correct way. I slide it over the first side, stretching it around to the other side, and it's on. I set that down. I grab my trigger. Now with your trigger, you have two pins that are, or two springs that are really close looking in size and resemblance. One of them is shaped more like a pyramid. It has a wider base on it. Okay? That wider base spring goes into the hole in your trigger and locks in there. It's that simple. Your disconnector drops right into that hole and just basically sits there until you're ready to install it. Okay, now your trigger spring. Okay, the way I look at this is I want it to basically resemble the helicopter landing gear. Okay, so this is how it should be installed. The bridge of the spring needs to go underneath the front of the spring, and basically your holes just slide over. So it's installed like that. Disconnector just pops right back into the hole. Okay. Then is what I like to put in next is your magazine catch. Take the lever, it slides into the hole and drops right in like that. You flip it over while holding the release with your left hand. Drop the spring into there, and it's the largest spring that we have in the parts kit. And basically is what I do is I depress the spring and I give it one turn. You give it a couple turns. So it's engaged, and as what you do is push around the other side and basically is what you want to do is you want the button to be flush with the end of the magazine release. It's adjustable, you can push it in or out. Basically you want to adjust it so when you push it your magazine just drops out onto the ground. Next, I like to install the bolt catch. But first we have to put in the bolt catch and the bolt catch detent. Okay, now right in this little area right here, you're going to have a hole there. The detent and the spring go together, just like that, and it goes into the hole spring first. So the detent is out. There's only one way that this is going to fit on there. So that drops right onto there like that, and I like to pull it into place with my left thumb. I get the proprietary bolt catch Allen head screw and I slide it in so that it locks it into place. I then get the small 1/16 Allen and I tighten it down. It doesn't have to be super tight, just basically snug it into position. Being careful not to over tighten this. Should you ever want to install a 9mm adapter, so all you do is pull out that Allen and your adapter's ready to drop in. So take a look at our next videos up. It'll show you how to do all that. Then is what I like to do is I like to take the trigger pack, which is what you just built. You drop it right into the lower receiver, and with your left thumb you push it into place. Now is what you're looking to do is you're looking to line up the hole so that you can install the trigger pin. Okay, remember, trigger pin doesn't matter which way it goes in. Is what this little groove here is it the hammer spring actually locks it into place, so you don't have to worry about it popping out left or right. Is what I do is I kind of fish it in to place, and you can look at the backside and look at the other hole on the backside and kind of get everything lined up. Sometimes it's a little bit of a pain, and you can use like the backside of a hammer or something to kind of knock it into place. The wooden side, not the ball peen side. Okay, once that is in, what I like to do is install my safety selector. Safety selector goes in on the left side. Then is what I do is I flip it over, holding the safety selector with my left index finger, pushing it up. I take the safety selector detent, which is the detent with a rim on it. It looks sort of like a 357 round kinda, with a detent and then the high base there. Actually, hold on just a second. I want to show you guys a little trick. Some of you guys doing 80%ers, I sometimes get phone calls about my safety selector detent isn't going in, it's not working correctly. Is what I like to do is take a drift pin punch and I push it in so that it is all the way through the safety selector. Sometimes you build up a little ridge of aluminum in there, and I like to push it all out of the way so that you don't have to worry about when you're finished having a situation where your safety selector isn't working correctly. Once again, I put the safety selector in from the right side, holding it with my left index finger as I turn it over. And I put the detent in, turning the lower receiver upside down, and I engage it with a pin so you can kind of feel it lock into place. And what that does is it locks your safety into place, so if you're not holding it, it's not going to fall out. So hold it, push it into place, continue holding it. Okay, then is what I do is I grab my shortened rear takedown pin and I drop it into place. Okay, now most lower receivers have the have the hole in the back for the detent. We put it underneath so that you get it from the bottom of the grip. Drop your detent pin in, drop your spring in, which is going to push that detent up. Okay, and you'll push it and you'll twist it until you feel the detent engage. Then is what I do is I take my grip and I drop the remaining long spring into the hole in the grip. And now this is kind of tricky because you have to watch this pin, or this spring here, so that you don't kink it. And is what I do is I like to leave it flat and I push it all the way in, and then I grab the grip like that. So you're pushing the grip into place. I grab the grip screw and I drop it right into place. Okay. Now, when installing this grip screw, you have to keep in mind that if it's not sliding, if it's not going in without, if it's going in without force, then it's going in right. If you're having to force it in, you're probably cross-threading it, and it'll be a problem. Don't cross-thread this screw. This isn't one that you have to gorilla torque on there, so just snug it up. It won't come out. It's got a lock washer on it. So now you're at this point here, and this is where I grab the hammer. Hammer goes in with the two legs so that it's actually straddling that that trigger that you just dropped in. Okay, and it's what I like to do is I like to kind of push it into place and drop the pin right into that hole. Sometimes they go in real easy, sometimes they fight you, because remember, you have that J spring in there that is actually indexing off of this groove in the pin. And once again, these two pins, doesn't matter which one you use on which hole, they're both exactly the same. So give it a little tap, make sure it's lined up in the back, and it'll drop right into place. You'll feel it detent into the J spring, and you'll know that it's in when it's flush on both sides. Now, how you do a safety check on this lower receiver after you get the trigger in is you cock the hammer back and you pull the trigger. Okay, now when you pull the trigger, you don't release the trigger, you just pull it and hold it back. Okay, holding the trigger. Okay, then you drop it into place by cocking it with your left index finger. Okay, and it should hold there. Then you release the trigger, and you see how it was on the disconnector, and then when you drop it, it catches on the sear on the front. Okay, and then you drop it again, holding the trigger, cocking it again, releasing it. You want to do that 5 or 6 times just to make sure that your parts kit isn't out of spec, or your holes for your hammer and trigger were not drilled in inappropriate places. So that's pretty much it for the lower receiver. Then you have the couple parts left, your buffer tube and your bullet button, which I'll show you guys how to install last. Is how you do this is the first part that's going to go on is your castle nut. Now you want the big open 4 teeth holes going towards the back of the buffer tube. Okay, so it's going to go on there like this. Doesn't matter which one you install, mil-spec or commercial, they're pretty much identical. The backing plate, you're going to see one portion of it is raised The other portion of it's dished. The raised portion is going to go towards the lower receiver. So it's going to look like that. Okay. Now, as what I do is I screw this thing on there until you get close to engaging the buffer tube, buffer detent. Okay, and as what you do is you take the buffer and the spring, you install the spring into the buffer, and you install it into the hole. Okay, now there's a spring alert on this one, guys, so be careful. What I like to do is I push it in with my left index finger and I turn the buffer tube into place. Okay, now if you notice, the buffer tube basically holds the detent in. So you want it to have a little bit of engagement. If you have too much engagement, then I'll show you what happens. Your buffer doesn't pop up into place. Okay, so this one here looks like it'll be good right there. If you get too much engagement, sometimes this lip here protrudes from the lower receiver, so it's actually sticking out like this in there. Your lower receiver, your upper receiver will not close with your upper on it because of the interference with your upper and your buffer tube. Now, what I do is I snap the backing plate into place and I tighten the castle nut. Then is what I do is I get the castle nut wrench, which slides onto the big portion of the castle nut, and I kind of use both hands and I squeeze it together. Now this thing doesn't have to be on there super tight. Snug it up real good. Okay. Then is what I do is I like to take a drift and put a little detent into. You'll notice that there's a little divot in the front side of the castle nut right here. I like to swedge with a drift the backing plate into the castle nut, and I'll show you how that looks. So you line it up so that it is like that. Take your little ball peen hammer, okay, you'll notice that the extra metal stretched into the castle nut. Now, is what this does is it makes it so the castle nut can't back out and your buffer tube can't back out. If you don't swedge them together, this castle nut likes to back off with the repetitive shooting that you're going to do. This will back out, this will back out. Your buffer tube could basically turn how it wants to, and sometimes keep in mind that it only needs a quarter of a turn and your buffer will pop out and get inside your fire control group. So there you have it. People who are in non-free states such as California and New York, you guys aren't allowed to have these easy detach mags. So we have to have bullet buttons. Bullet buttons go in the same way. Same location as your mag release. You're going to notice that on your bullet button it's going to come with a housing. Okay, inside of that you're going to notice that one opening is larger than the other side's opening. The big opening goes out. The little opening goes down into where the bolt catch, or where the mag catch lever is. Spring drops in, and you're going to have this castle nut that has like a little crown on it. Okay, that there is going to drop in, and you use a pocket screwdriver to screw it into place. That will make it so that you have to have a tool to remove your magazine. So there you have it. Installation of your lower parts kit. That's pretty much all there is to it. Have any questions, feel free to give us a call or post them up, and I'll answer them when I can. Take a look at some of our other videos, and happy shooting.